Next, we'd like to have up Michelle Ferrier. Michelle is a magnificent journalism professor, entrepreneurial journalism professor, one of the real leaders in our field, and a pioneer. And we're delighted to have Michelle here at our, if you're a journalism teacher, July 15, the Entrepreneurial Journalism Educators Summit will be here at CUNY. So Michelle's coming for that too. We're always grateful to have you here.
Yes, great.
But you're here today because you have had a special project you've worked on, a personal passion, called Trollbusters.
Right.
Tell us what that is.
So Trollbusters is really what I call a just-in-time rescue service for online harassment for women writers and women journalists. And so what we do is go into Twitter and really try to provide a hedge of protection around targets. A lot of work goes into blocking the trolls or doing technology solutions to try and eliminate the trolls, but I don't think that's fruitful in any way. And so what I began to really look at was what were the ways that we could really support journalists in staying online in the face of online harassment. And so what we do is work on Twitter and flood their stream when we're alerted that troll behavior is happening. We flood their stream with positive messages, as well as just-in-time education to help them protect themselves both online and off.
Does it work?
Yes.
What are some examples of rescues you've done?
So the types of things that we see, it really ranges. Because I think when people think about trolls, they really don't have a nuanced view of what online harassment is. And online harassment is a very large spectrum of behavior. Bullying and cyberbullying for young people, to what we're seeing and dealing with Trollbusters, which really has to do with the really extreme types of online harassment. Women, and particularly women journalists and women writers, get the most egregious types of hate tweets. And those hate tweets can range from everything from rape threats to death threats to bodily harm to people sending them very vile and very violent types of videos in order to disturb them emotionally and to get them to go dark and go offline. And so what we try and do is really flood the Twitter stream with positive messaging. We also begin to monitor that feed so that if we do need to go to law enforcement, we can. And we actually are exploring. We've had people ask us, why just women writers and women journalists? I have a personal connection to the issue, which is why we started there. But I also work on a case-by-case basis with men who are dealing with these issues. And so the whole spectrum of behavior has just really blown up in the past year with people really getting a much deeper understanding of what's happening online and the types of trolls that we're dealing with that are very, very different than the teen boy in a basement that has self-esteem issues.
Thank you for doing this. I think we're all very grateful that this exists. The website is troll-busters.com, and her handle is Media Ghosts.
That's my personal handle.
Yeah, okay.
And when we do some of our rescue stuff, and as well as our channel, it's Your SOS Team.
Your SOS Team, T-E-A-M.
Right.
Wonderful.
So the idea is to really come in and help them persist online in the face of the work that they're doing.
And what's an unusual story that would help us understand this?
Oh gosh, there's a couple of issues. And so the types of people who get attacked and the trolling behavior is very different. The gentleman that we worked with, his was a very interesting case because one, these online behaviors mirror the kinds of offline gender behaviors that we've seen for years. However, in physical space and physical stalking, as we know, in domestic violence, at the local level, really, law enforcement has swung to supporting women, which I think it should. However, it also sometimes victimizes men who are the target as well, rather than the perpetrator. And in this case, I worked with a young man whose ex-girlfriend targeted him online with fake profiles on Facebook, where she implicated him in child pornography. Destroyed his reputation. He lost his job, lost several jobs as a result of it, and then carried that behavior into online and had him both online and offline stalking and kept those injunctions going so that he could not get out from under this net that she'd cast. And so in that sense, us putting something into the feed in Twitter wasn't really what he needed. He needed additional services. And so we worked with him to put together his evidence for court. And I'm really, really, really happy to say that both the online and the offline charges have been dropped. And the judge has said to the state, do not bring this case before me without doing your due diligence.
Yeah, very good.
So, these behaviors, women and men, are a part of this, this dynamic. And people, I believe, can be trolls on any issue. Anybody can be a troll. So it's not as if, well, I was going to say it's not as if we can predict who's going to be trolls, but actually there is technology that is coming out that's able to look at your language patterns, et cetera, and I think it's with almost close to 90% specificity determine whether you are likely to become a troll. So there's predictive technologies that are being developed.
You're all getting the test before you leave.
Yeah, so predictive technologies, again, to block the trolls. But the behavior is very, very damaging. There's emotional effects. So just like with physical rape and physical violence, there's a silencing effect, a chilling effect on the journalist and their ability to be able to do their job. There's emotional effects where they're isolated from their family and their communities and their friends who don't understand the dynamic of the behavior that they're going through. And there's economic effects. Think about a freelancer or stringer whose article for a particular publication blows up and then goes to try and get another job, and somebody Googles them and sees all this nasty trolling activity happening. They're more likely not to hire them, to not bring that into their own space. And so there's long-term identity and reputation issues that come along with this.
So this last week, John Weissman, who's an editor of the New York Times, rather now famously dumped Twitter, and he said, and I quote his tweet, "I will leave Twitter to the racists, the anti-Semites, the Bernie bros who attacked women reporters yesterday. Maybe Twitter will rethink." What's your view of the responsibility of all the platforms? Twitter is the one because it's the most open that gets the most problems. What, if anything, could Twitter do to help?
I've been very straight with them in that they're profiting from other people's pain. They make a profit. They make money, and they need to put that money back into strong moderation and being more responsive to people whose lives are being destroyed because of the speed and because of the ferociousness of swarm activity that happens. So there's troll activity where it's just one-off kinds of behavior, one person coming after you, like we saw with Gamergate and some of these other kinds of activities in Bernie Bros. There's a pile-on effect, and trying to come out from under that while still doing your job online, I can tell you from experiences that that's a really challenging thing to do. And so not only do the platforms need to really take responsibility and stop abdicating that responsibility to the public to police this, and really put some strong policies in place. And I believe they're trying, but a lot of this is cultural. A lot of this is nuanced. And it's very difficult if you're using even machine learning or natural language processing to get context. And so we try and do a little bit of proactive work with Trollbusters. Sometimes somebody will be like, "I'm going to kill you." And we look at that tweet and we try and look at what the conversation has been around it. And sometimes we just very politely put a little warning tweet in there saying, "Trollbusters is watching." And sometimes people laugh and they share it with their friends because they're like, "Oh, somebody's watching what I'm doing online," and that causes them to pause. And we've actually found just even putting our warning tweets into a stream, if they're one-off trolls, they'll stop because they're not quite sure what we're capable of doing and whether we're able to find them. But when you're talking about Gamergate and a pile-on effect of these swarms and smart mobs, it's very difficult because they are anonymous, they know how to use the networks. It's very difficult to trace their IP. We don't have the sophisticated digital forensics to be able to really dig in and get their identity. And so people really drown in the hateful tweets that come at them.
Do you find, I've seen trolls myself, and let me be clear here, as a privileged white male, I don't suffer anything like others do, but you get a preview of what goes on in terms of the structure of it and how they operate. The ability to make a new account and a new account and a new account and a new account, and then start doing the same thing.
Yes.
I would think that that's an area where you can recognize the patterns. Who's being attacked? what's happening, how quickly it's coming back.
Who else have they attacked?
Yeah.
Right, and actually that's some of the things that we're working on as well. So right now we act in a reactive way when we're alerted through our reporting tool. But one of the things that we're looking at is really a much more comprehensive monitoring system using natural language processing, machine learning to really be more predictive in looking at conversations that are happening around hashtags, look at the opinion leaders and voices that are speaking in those areas, find the trolls, and then be able to go in and rescue the people that they're attacking.
I'm just looking to see if this is online or not. Yeah, so last year at Newsgeist, which is this wonderful event held by the Knight Foundation and also Google, you gave an emotional, personal, raw, amazing talk at a Knight talk. I believe it's up on YouTube.
It is.
So I don't want to make you live through that again and talk about that, but I think we should mention, if it's okay with you,
No,
that
that's
Trollbusters came from your own experience and from trying to rescue others. If Trollbusters had been around when you suffered this, how much of a difference would it have made?
So a little bit of backstory. 10 years ago, I was the first African-American columnist at a newspaper in Florida, and almost immediately started receiving hate mail, the traditional mail as well as email. Normally shrug that off, had a special folder, put them into the special folder. You try and shrug that off. However, very soon into my career as a columnist, there was one person that began to attack me systematically over time and send little manifestos through the mail to me. And the newspaper had no idea how to deal with this. And many newspapers don't have any policies on how to deal with this kind of issue. And so first letter, shrug off, second letter, kind of shrug off, third letter, go to the police and try and get local law enforcement to look into this. And got to the point where the police are patrolling my home. My kids had cell phones to try and protect us from this person because it became very clear from the rhetoric and the language of how they were attacking me that this was an organized hate group, and this was a tactic of organized hate groups to shut down diverse voices, both in the newspaper as well as online. And so when I began to explore with other columnists and began to talk to professional organizations about how they dealt with this, it became very clear there was no policies and no clear pathway, and that many people of color and women journalists had just quietly exited journalism into strategic communications or PR and just left behind and abandoned their careers because of this kind of activity. And so I started then a project called Spot Hate, which was using GIS technology to map hate crimes that were reported in newspapers to see if we could discover a pattern of incidences based on these reports and see if we could track the hate groups. And so I worked with the Southern Poverty Law Center, and they didn't have their database online at the time. They now have a map database of organized hate groups that they've put online. So you can go to your own state and see what kinds of groups and where these groups are operating. But they didn't have that at the time. And so my case went from the local law enforcement to the FBI, to the CIA, to all different kinds of professional organizations, no activity. And it was finally the Committee to Protect Journalists, those people that you know, really to be associated with people who they are supporting on the front lines in war zones. The war zones have come to our own neighborhood doorsteps, people. Yeah. And so the Committee to Protect Journalists stepped in, took up my case, and took it to the Department of Justice to get them to investigate. But unfortunately, the Department of Justice was dealing with our new African-American president who brought all of the hate groups out of the woodwork with a vengeance. And so the fact that he's still alive 8 years later, I'm very surprised because they were so overwhelmed with what was happening with Obama during his inauguration. They had no bandwidth to deal with a little reporter in Florida. So I left my job at the newspaper and went into higher education.
But didn't forget the pain, didn't
No.
forget that, and came back to rescue others. And I'm grateful for what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
For those